I think further points need to be made about the attack on Bishop Emmanuel. And the Assyrian Orthodox Church is technically one of the Nestorian churches. It's one of the first churches to have been in conflict with the Orthodox traditions. But there was fluidity in the early church, and there are differences about the belief in the Trinity and belief in the communion sacrament and so on. But the Syrian church, the Persian church, is a very old tradition, using East Syriac as its official language, which is a version of Aramaic, the language spoken by Jesus. And he was attacked during the Eucharist service, Kabana Kadisha, and following a talk he'd given where he was comparing the traditions of Islam with the traditions of Christianity, and pointing out the differences in the traditions about Jesus. Now, I don't see any harm in that, and I certainly don't see that he merits an attack by a foolish 15-year-old who has clearly come under some sort of radicalization. This radicalizing really begins with the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran in 1979, who is responsible for quite a lot of the chaos that has spread through Islamic traditions. And his emphasis particularly, which I quite regularly repeat, that a suicide victim, suicide is condemned twice explicitly in the Quran. It's not explicitly condemned in the Bible, either in the Old or the New Testaments. And of course this leads to the extraordinary story of Masada. It might be condemned, and it is condemned, in the early Catholic traditions, and therefore in many of the churches there was quite a stern attitude to suicide. But now I think most of the Christian churches recognize that in most cases suicide is a result of a mental disorder. It's something to be treated with sympathy and consideration. But the Ayatollah Khomeini invented something quite different. He invented this idea of suicide as a weapon. It had already been weaponized by some terror groups, like Black September and so on. But that was a political weapon. This he turned into a religious weapon, suggesting that the suicide victims were shaheeds or martyrs. And this is, in many ways, linguistic nonsense. But it's not the only linguistic nonsense that this perverse cleric instituted. And as the Iranian regime lurches further into a desperation to be heard, and as it is clearly losing control in its own country, and there's a rise of nationalist determination to get rid of the Islamic rulers, Iran is not a monolithic Muslim state. There's a vibrant Jewish community, a vibrant Christian community, a growing Zoroastrian community, and so on. And a lot of Muslims in Iran are fairly nebulous in their understanding of the Shia interpretation. The ruling party is clinging on by its fingernails. But the seed of hatred that it has sown into Islam is astonishing. Islam has no more violence in it, frankly, than many of the other religious texts, and it's all to do with interpretation. And the interpretation sanctioned, encouraged by the Ayatollah Khomeini is an interpretation of hate and aggression. And I personally find it incredibly sad when young people are caught up in this nonsense and are bewitched into a belief that religion is about hatred and about oppression. Religion is about an attempt to find the other in our lives, and that's not at the expense of other people, or shouldn't be. And for a priest and a bishop to be attacked during the Divine Liturgy is simply horrendous. I try wherever possible to skirt around issues of religion when it comes to YouTube. I feel that it's perhaps not appropriate for me to talk in too much detail. It's my subject. It's the stuff I studied at university. It's the stuff I've taught for many years. And Bishop Emmanuel was very well placed to make his statements. He's a man who knows Arabic as well as Syriac, and he traveled around the world. He has a YouTube following, a media following, social media following, and he comes across as a man dedicated to peace. And he is attacked in his own church. I find this very shocking, deeply shocking, and the fact that it's happened so soon after the Iranian attack. As I say, the Nestorian Church is a very interesting tradition which has links with very early Christianity and very, very interesting differences between that form of Christianity, that understanding of Christianity, and later versions of Orthodoxy and Catholicism. Nearly every Christian church claims to be the traditional Orthodox Christian Catholic Church. The word Catholic means universal. The word Orthodox means right belief. But the churches have fragmented. The Western Church and the Eastern Church breaking into two shortly after the first millennium. When exactly it happens is up for debate, whether it's the Filioque or the Great Schism, or indeed a later point, because there were still bishops in the Orthodox Church who were praying for the Pope as a brother bishop, and there were still Catholics in the Catholic Church who were praying for the Orthodox clergy, demonstrating that these two churches were not absolutely divided. There was the Council of Florence, which effected some sort of reconciliation. There was the reconciliation just before the fall of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. But essentially the split between those two churches was a split in language and culture, and an incapacity to understand one another. So again, urging us today to talk more and to use these great advances in communications to bridge the gaps in language that existed in earlier centuries. And then, of course, there's the Westfield Bondi Junction mass stabbings, which took place just a very short while ago. And for so much to happen in such a short space of time in Australia, I'm sure Sydney is overwhelmed, and I know that riots have broken out, and the media, in so many ways, has lost touch with reality. But these are fierce events, and the health services are fighting to save lives and to help to repair the damage done by these mad individuals. But 15 is very young to be radicalized and to be wielding a knife. 15 is very young.